proudly in the front, and the guests looked happy, like they were part of something special. Everything was going exactly as planned. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and from the outside, it truly looked perfect. No one could see anything wrong. I slowly turned my head and looked at my fiancé. He stood beside me, calm and confident, just like always. There was no nervousness on his face, no hesitation. He looked sure about everything. About us. When our eyes met, he gave me a small, reassuring smile. It was the same smile that made me trust him from the beginning. In that moment, I felt like I had made the right choice. The ceremony had already started, and everyone was focused on us. The priest was speaking, but I wasn't really listening. My mind was filled with thoughts about our future, about how everything was about to change. I told myself this was the moment I had been waiting for. But then, for a second, something inside me felt strange. I couldn't explain it. Nothing was wrong, yet something didn't feel completely right. I tried to ignore it and focus again, but that feeling didn't go away. Everything looked perfect, but it didn't feel completely right, and I didn't know why. As I stood there, trying to focus on the ceremony, my eyes slowly moved across the crowd. Everyone looked happy, relaxed, and involved in the moment. My parents were smiling, my relatives were whispering to each other, and everything seemed normal. But then my eyes stopped on one person, my sister. She was standing a little away from everyone else, not sitting, not talking, just watching. Her face was completely different from the others. No smile, no excitement, nothing. While everyone else looked like they were enjoying the wedding, she looked still, almost too still at first. I thought maybe she was just emotional. It happens at weddings. But the more I looked at her, the more something felt off. She wasn't emotional. She wasn't nervous. She was focused. Her eyes were fixed on the stage, on me, and then on him. I noticed the way she kept looking between us, like she was thinking about something, waiting for something. It didn't feel natural. She wasn't reacting like a sister at her own sibling's wedding should. No happiness, no support, not even a small smile. For a moment, I felt a slight discomfort in my chest. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was just overthinking. Maybe I was too stressed. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But even as I looked away, I could still feel her presence. It was like she wasn't part of the celebration at all. She wasn't celebrating. She was waiting. And I couldn't understand why she was acting like this. The ceremony continued, and I forced myself to focus again. The priest's voice became clearer as he moved into the final part. This was it, the most important moment. The part where everything would become real, official, permanent. I tightened my grip on the bouquet slightly and took a slow breath, trying to calm the strange feeling still sitting in my chest. He began speaking about commitment, trust, and the meaning of marriage. His words were simple, but they carried weight. I listened carefully this time, trying to stay in the moment. This was what I had been waiting for. All the planning, all the preparation, all the emotions had led to this exact point. I glanced at my fiancé again. He looked just as steady as before. No confusion, no fear, nothing unusual. He looked ready. That gave me a sense of comfort. Maybe everything really was fine. Maybe that strange feeling didn't mean anything. The priest then shifted slightly and looked at both of us. His tone changed, becoming more serious, more focused. He was about to begin the final vows. I felt my heartbeat rise, not from fear, but from the importance of the moment. This was the last step. I straightened my posture, trying to stay calm. I told myself to just get through these few seconds. Just listen, respond, and everything would fall into place. Just one moment more, and everything would be official. The priest opened his mouth to continue, and then a voice cut through the silence. Stop. It wasn't loud at first, but it was sharp enough to freeze everything. The priest paused mid-sentence. The guests turned their heads. My heart skipped for a second, like it already knew what was coming before I even looked. Then it came again, louder this time. Stop this wedding. The word echoed across the hall. Every conversation ended instantly. Chairs shifted, people stood slightly, trying to see what was happening. The calm, controlled atmosphere broke in a second. Slowly, I turned my head. My sister was walking forward. Step by step, she moved through the crowd, not rushing, not hesitating. Every eye in the room followed her. No one tried to stop her. It was like everyone was too shocked to react. Even my parents looked confused, unable to understand what she was doing. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look emotional. She looked completely sure of herself. My fiancé frowned slightly beside me, clearly not expecting this. The priest stepped back, unsure whether to continue or stop. The silence became heavy, uncomfortable, almost unbearable. My sister finally stopped in front of us. For a moment, she said nothing. She just looked at me, then at him, then back at me again. I could feel my heartbeat getting louder, but I didn't speak. No one did, one word. And everything collapsed. And then she opened her mouth to speak. She looked straight at me, then slowly turned her eyes toward him. There was no hesitation in her expression, no sign of doubt. It was like she had already decided how this moment would go. My sister's fiancé, she said clearly, her voice steady enough for everyone to hear, is not who you think he is. A wave of confusion moved through the crowd. People leaned forward, trying to understand what she meant. My heart started beating faster, but I stayed still, watching her carefully. She took a small step closer. He's a playboy, she continued. And he's been cheating. The words hit the room like a shock. Gasps spread across the guests. Someone whispered, "What?" Another voice said, "This can't be real." My mother looked at me in disbelief, while my father's face turned serious in an instant. My fiancé reacted immediately. "That's not true," he said firmly, his voice controlled but tense. "She's lying." But my sister didn't even look at him. She kept her eyes on me, like she wanted me to believe every word she was saying. "You think I would say this without a reason?" she replied calmly. "You think I would come here and ruin everything for no reason?" The room grew quieter, but the tension increased. People were no longer confused. Now they were watching closely, waiting for something more. She folded her arms slightly, her confidence still strong. "He didn't just cheat," she added. "He's been pretending this whole time. Acting loyal, acting honest, but behind your back, he is something else completely." My fiancé tried to speak again, but his voice felt smaller now compared to the weight of her accusation. I didn't move. I didn't react, because the way she was speaking, it didn't feel random. She didn't hesitate. She came prepared, and that made one question rise in everyone's mind. Did she have proof? She didn't wait for anyone to respond. Without saying another word, she reached into her hand and lifted her phone. The movement was slow, but confident. Like she had already planned this moment in detail. "Since no one wants to believe me," she said, her voice calm, "let me show you." She turned the screen outward so the people closest could see. A few guests stepped forward immediately. Someone took the phone and raised it higher so others could look. The crowd shifted, trying to get a better view. "It's photos," one person whispered. "And messages," another voice added. Within seconds, reactions started spreading across the room. Gasps, shocked faces, people covering their mouths. The energy changed again, but this time it felt heavier. My mother stepped closer, her eyes scanning the screen. Her expression slowly turned from confusion to disbelief. My father followed, his face tightening as he looked at what was being shown. "This looks real," someone said quietly. My sister spoke again, her tone steady. "These are from his phone, from his conversations with me. He's been meeting me behind her back." She pointed slightly toward me. "He told me things he would never say in front of you all." My fiancé shook his head immediately. "That's fake," he said. Those messages are edited. I never said any of that. But now it was different. Before, it was just words. Now there was something people could see. Something they could believe. The photos showed him sitting with her, talking, close enough to look suspicious. The messages looked clear, detailed, personal. Too detailed to ignore. The crowd was no longer just watching. They were reacting, judging, forming opinions. I stood there, silent, my eyes moving between the screen and the faces around me, because the truth was, it looked convincing, it looked real, too real to ignore. And now everyone was thinking the same thing. Was it true? My fiancé stepped forward immediately, his face tense but controlled. That's not true, he said firmly, his voice cutting through the whispers. She's lying. None of this happened the way she says. He raised his hand slightly, trying to calm the crowd. Please, just listen to me for a second. I have never cheated. I have never said those things to her or anyone else. She's making this up. His eyes met mine for a brief moment, full of urgency, pleading for me to believe him. He turned toward my parents, speaking with as much clarity as he could muster. You know me. You know who I am. I love her. I have never done anything to betray her trust. But the moment he spoke, the tension in the room didn't ease. People were leaning in, whispering to each other, pointing fingers, shaking their heads. Some looked shocked, others skeptical. His words were there, but somehow they were being drowned out by the weight of her accusations. I can explain everything, he continued, raising his voice slightly. Please, just give me a chance to prove that she is lying. His tone was desperate now, but still steady. He wanted them to see the truth, wanted them to hear him clearly. I could feel the energy around us shifting. Instead of waiting to listen, people were already forming judgments. Eyes darted between him and my sister. Some nodded toward her as if what she said was obvious. Others stared at him, confused, unsure who to trust. No one was listening anymore. He said quietly to me, his frustration barely contained. His calm demeanor was slipping, replaced by a tight tension in his shoulders and a sharp edge in his voice. And in that moment, I realized that it didn't matter what he said or how clearly he explained himself. Everyone had already started deciding. The question hanging in the air, heavy and unavoidable, was simple. Who would they believe? My parents' faces had changed in an instant. My mother's eyes were wide with shock, and then slowly, anger started to replace the confusion. How could you do this? She demanded, her voice trembling but sharp. My father's jaw tightened, and his eyes darted between him and my sister. The weight of disappointment heavy in every line of his face. My fiancé tried to speak again, but it felt like the room had closed around him. Every word he said seemed to vanish before it even reached anyone. People weren't listening, they were judging. Whispers spread quickly. How could he betray her? We trusted him. I can't believe this. Even relatives who had known him for years were frowning, turning their attention away. From logic and toward assumption, the energy in the hall shifted completely. The smiles, the excitement, the soft conversation all gone. Every guest now felt compelled to take a side, to assign blame, to be part of the chaos. My sister's confidence grew with every glance, every gasp, every whisper in the room. She wasn't nervous anymore. She was winning. My mother's voice rose, shaking with emotion. You ruined everything, she said, her tone a mixture of pain and anger. Our family trusted you. My father's voice joined hers, commanding, attention, this wedding cannot continue if this is true. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some nodding, others gasping, unable to hide their judgment. They were ready to act on what they thought was fact, completely ignoring the denials, the explanations. The truth, my fiancé was shouting. I watched him struggle to defend himself, saw the frustration in his eyes, the helplessness as every explanation fell on deaf ears. It didn't matter how innocent he was. The decision was already being made without the truth. And then the murmurs turned into louder voices. People were standing now, calling out, pointing, demanding action. The priest hesitated, uncertain, the ceremony collapsing around him. The wedding that had started so perfectly was crumbling, and I could feel it in my chest. Everything we had planned, everything we had hoped for, was on the edge of falling apart. Voices grew louder. Guests were no longer quietly judging, they were shouting, pointing, and demanding action. Some of my relatives were arguing with each other, trying to figure out who was right. The tension in the room had turned into chaos. Chairs scraped against the floor. People stood up, leaning over each other to get a better view of the screen my sister was holding. Amidst the noise, someone near the entrance shouted, "Call the police." Immediately, the words spread through the room like wildfire. A few people nodded, others murmured in agreement, and suddenly, the threat of police involvement became real. The atmosphere shifted. This wasn't just a family argument or a wedding disruption anymore. It was a serious situation. My fiancé tried to raise his voice again to explain that everything was false, that the photos and messages were fabricated, but no one was listening. The crowd wasn't interested in hearing him out. Their eyes were sharp, judgmental, and accusatory. His frustration grew, but it was swallowed by the noise and chaos around him. My sister, on the other hand, seemed unstoppable. She moved slightly forward, holding the phone high, her confidence unshaken. Every accusation she had made now felt heavier, stronger, more believable to the people around her. Whispers turned into murmurs of agreement. Some guests shook their heads, others gasped, and a few even stepped closer to get a better look at the supposed proof. The priest stepped back, unsure whether to continue or intervene. His voice, once calm and commanding, was now lost in the rising confusion. People were no longer thinking about the ceremony, about vows or marriage. They were thinking about the accusation, about judgment, about punishment. This wasn't just drama anymore. It was destruction. And as the tension grew, the question everyone in the room silently feared was unavoidable. Would the wedding even continue? Or was this the end before it had truly begun? I stood frozen, my hands gripping the bouquet, my eyes moving between my sister, my fiancé, and the guests. My heart was racing, but my face stayed calm. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I didn't react. I simply watched everything unfold. At first, people assumed I was shocked or broken. Whispers started immediately. "She's crying inside. Maybe she's too stunned to speak. Is she scared?" My parents looked at me, searching my eyes for some sign, some answer. But there was nothing, at least nothing obvious. The silence I maintained began to make the room feel heavier. Guests stopped arguing for a moment, glancing at me instead. My sister's confidence seemed to wobble slightly, just a fraction, as she realized I wasn't reacting the way she expected. My fiancé beside me looked frustrated, his attempts to defend himself being drowned out by the weight of the chaos. He leaned closer and whispered, "Say something." But I stayed quiet. I noticed how every pair of eyes now seemed to focus entirely on me. Their judgment, their curiosity, their expectation, it was all directed my way. They wanted tears, wanted outrage, wanted me to cancel everything, to break down and confirm her story. But I didn't give them that. My silence confused them. But it was intentional. Inside, I was calculating, observing, waiting. Every movement my sister made, every expression, every subtle sign, it all mattered. I had seen through her confidence. I had already suspected her plan. But now, I needed them to see it too. In their own time, I could feel the tension growing around us, the silence becoming almost unbearable. People shifted nervously, some frowning, some whispering. The longer I stayed quiet, the more uneasy they became, and in that moment, the question in everyone's mind grew louder, unspoken but clear. Why was I quiet? What was I waiting for? They didn't know that my silence was not weakness, it was strategy. My sister took a step closer, Her eyes locked on me. She wasn't angry or nervous anymore. She was confident, almost smug, as if she already knew the outcome. "Say something," she commanded, her voice calm but firm. "Don't just stand there pretending like nothing happened. Everyone is waiting for you to react." Her words cut through the room. All eyes shifted toward me. Guests leaned in, murmuring under their breath. My parents exchanged worried glances, unsure whether to intervene or wait. The priest's hands tightened slightly on his book, clearly tense but unsure how to handle the growing pressure. She thought she had already won. I realized quietly to myself. Every movement she made, every glance, every controlled gesture, was meant to force me into confirming her story. She believed that if I said nothing, I was admitting defeat or worse, that I had no defense. She raised the phone slightly higher, showing the photos and messages again, making sure everyone could see. "You can't stay silent," she said. Softly but pointedly. "Everyone needs to know the truth. Speak now, or accept that this wedding is over because of him." Some guests nodded slightly, murmuring agreement. Others looked at me expectantly, waiting for my reaction. The weight of their judgment pressed down harder with each second. I didn't respond. My parents' faces reflected a mixture of frustration, worry, and confusion. My fiancé's jaw was tight, and his hands trembled slightly as he tried to hold them steady. She leaned closer, her tone sharp now. "Why are you staying quiet? Don't make it harder for yourself. Speak before it's too late. Everyone is watching. Everyone is judging." "Don't let him," her words trailed off, but the meaning was clear. She wanted me to confirm her lies, to give her power, to control the entire narrative. She believed she had already won, that I would break under the pressure and give her the victory she craved. And in that moment, the question hung in the air, tense and unavoidable. Would I break under her pressure, or would I hold on to the truth? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every gaze in the room on me. The whispers had slowed slightly, and all eyes were fixed, expecting a reaction. My sister's confidence was at its peak, ready for me to confirm her story. My fiancé looked at me, desperate for a word, a sign, anything to support him. My parents waited, confused and anxious. Then I spoke, my voice calm and steady, carrying across the hall. "Before you decide anything," I said softly but firmly, "you need to see something." The room froze instantly. My sister's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. The guests leaned forward, murmurs stopping mid-sentence. My mother's hands tightened together, my father's brow furrowed, and even the priest paused, holding his breath. I held the bouquet lightly in one hand and lifted the other slowly toward the screen behind the stage. Every movement was deliberate. I could feel the tension build with each passing second, the anticipation in the room growing heavier. "All of you have only seen what she wanted you to see," I continued. "Photos, messages, everything you think you know is only part of the story. There's more, and it changes everything." A few whispers started again, but this time they were mixed with curiosity. People leaned in, unsure of what to expect. My sister's confident posture faltered for the first time. She hadn't counted on me speaking calmly, not breaking, not panicking, not giving her the control she wanted. I pressed the remote in my hand slowly, signaling that I was about to reveal something important. "Watch carefully," I said, "because this is the truth." The room was silent again. Every eye followed my movements. Every ear strained for my next word. Even my sister seemed unsure, her smugness fading just slightly. My calm tone had stopped everyone, but it also raised a new question in every mind in the hall. What am I hiding? And what would happen once they saw it? The hall was completely silent now. All eyes were on me, but instead of the usual chaos, there was a strange stillness. Guests shifted slightly in their seats, whispering to each other in low tones, trying to guess what I was about to do. Some faces showed confusion, others curiosity, and a few still carried judgment. But now, that judgment was mixed with hesitation. My sister, who had been so confident before, took a small step back. For the first time, she looked unsure. Her smile, which had carried the weight of her supposed victory, had faded slightly. Her eyes darted between me and the screen behind the stage. I could see the faint tremor in her hands as she held the phone, a sign that my calmness and control were starting to shake her confidence. My fiancé leaned closer, giving me a small reassuring nod. His jaw was still tight, but his eyes held trust, and it reminded me that I needed to stay steady. One word, one movement at the wrong moment, and this could all collapse. The guests' confusion grew with every passing second. They had only seen half the story, and now they were waiting, anticipating something new. Their whispers were soft, but curious. What is she going to show? Could this change everything? What's really happening? Even my parents exchanged glances, worry and hope mingling in their expressions. I could feel the energy in the room shifting again. The tension was tangible, like a cord stretched tight, ready to snap. Everyone was waiting for the reveal, but no one could guess what it was. My sister shifted her weight, glanced at the screen behind us, and swallowed hard. The faintest crack in her confidence showed that she knew her plan might fail. That tiny doubt was all I needed. I held the remote steadily, my finger hovering above the button. The pause, the silence, the uncertainty made everyone lean closer, holding their breath. And in that moment, the question on everyone's mind was impossible to ignore. What's coming next? I pressed the button on the remote, and the screen behind the stage lit up immediately. A soft glow filled the hall as the video began to play. For a moment, there was nothing but a quiet room on the screen. Then, she appeared, my sister. The guests leaned forward instinctively, their eyes widening as they recognized her. She was standing in what looked like a small cafe, her expression nervous, restless, and entirely different from the confident, commanding persona she had carried into the hall. Her movements were small, hesitant, almost unsure, as if she were waiting for someone. I could feel the room's tension shift even more. The whispers started again, quieter this time, filled with curiosity. My parents stared at the screen, unable to look away. My fiancé's eyes narrowed, a flicker of hope showing, as if he already sensed what was coming. The video played on, showing my sister shifting, checking her phone, pacing slightly, and then looking up as someone entered. And that someone was him, my fiancé. The sound was clear. The cafe's ambient noise filled the hall, making it feel real. Immediate. The camera captured their interaction. She smiled nervously, and he looked surprised but calm. There was no closeness, no hidden gestures, no intimate touches, only a conversation. Their body language was polite, neutral, almost formal. I could see the crowd's reactions changing. Gasps, frowns, puzzled glance, as people were beginning to question what they had just been told. Some whispered, "Wait, that doesn't look like cheating." Others leaned in, squinting, trying to understand what they were seeing. The truth didn't come from me. It came from her, my sister, on her own screen, revealing her nervous, awkward side, entirely different from the bold, manipulative persona she had used to control the room. And as the video continued, the question hanging in the air grew heavier. Impossible to ignore. What exactly did this video show, and how would it change everything everyone thought they knew? The video continued, and the tension in the hall grew thicker. My sister, standing nervously in the cafe, finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost pleading, but every word carried weight. "I like you," she said, then corrected herself, as if trying to make it sound stronger. "No, I love you." She stepped closer to him, her hands slightly shaking, her eyes locked on his. Her tone was urgent, desperate, trying to convince him of something that clearly hadn't existed in the real world. "I know you don't feel the same yet," she added, "but if you just give me a chance, we could be better together. You and I promise it would be different. He looked at her with a mixture of surprise and discomfort. His posture was firm but polite. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't lean in. His calm demeanor didn't wavered even as she tried to manipulate the moment. Every movement he made said the same thing. He was not interested. The guests were silent, watching every expression, every subtle gesture. Gasps escaped here and there. Whispers of shock or disbelief rippled through the crowd. Some people's mouths were open, struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. Others leaned forward, trying to make sense of it all. She tried again, her voice trembling now, almost pleading. Please, you can't ignore me. Think about what we could have. Think about how much better it could be than her. Don't you feel it too? But he didn't budge. He took a careful step back, keeping his distance, his voice steady and clear. No, he said. I'm not interested. My heart belongs to her. The hall was completely silent. Every person in that room felt the weight of that word. My sister's face went pale. The confident, assertive woman she had been moments before was now trembling, her plan unraveling in real time. This wasn't betrayal. This was obsession. She wasn't trying to prove he cheated. She was trying to manipulate him, force him, into something that never existed. And as the video paused, the hall collectively held its breath, waiting for the next moment, the next reaction. The cliffhanger was impossible to ignore. How would he respond to her confession, and what would happen next in this unraveling chaos? The video captured the moment perfectly. My fiancé stood his ground, his eyes steady, voice firm. No, he said clearly, each word deliberate and unshakable. I'm not interested in you. My heart belongs to her. The hall seemed to hold its breath as the words echoed. Guests leaned forward, some in shock, some in disbelief. But slowly, their expressions began to shift. The confident narrative my sister had built so carefully was crumbling before their eyes. Every accusation, every manipulated photo, every false message, it suddenly felt meaningless in the light of his calm, unwavering truth. My sister's face went pale, and the confident smirk she had carried moments ago had completely vanished. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the phone, the very object that had once symbolized her power, now a weight dragging her down. She opened her mouth, probably to argue, to twist his words, to try another tactic, but no sound came out. The rejection was absolute, final, undeniable. He turned slightly toward the camera, toward me, his expression softening just a little. I love her, he added, his words quiet but carrying an unshakable truth. I have never loved anyone else, and I never will. The silence in the room was almost unbearable. Guests were no longer whispering accusations or debating what was true. They were watching, realizing that everything they had assumed about him was wrong. The trust they had almost lost was being restored, piece by piece, through his honesty and clarity. My sister stepped back, her confidence completely gone now. One answer had destroyed her entire plan. The bold, manipulative woman who had entered the wedding hall with a sense of victory was now shrinking before the truth. Powerless and exposed. I could feel the tension in the room shift, moving toward disbelief, confusion, and finally, a dawning realization among the guests. My parents looked stunned, processing the reality in front of them. My fiancé's integrity had spoken louder than any accusation could, and in that frozen moment, the question lingered in the hall, heavy and unavoidable. What would she do now? Stripped of her control and confronted by the truth, my sister's face twisted as the video continued. Her confident demeanor had completely vanished, replaced by anger and desperation. Her voice, low but sharp, carried across the cafe in the recording. If I can't have you, no one will, she said, her words deliberate, almost chilling. In their intensity, the guests in the hall leaned in, some gasping, others murmuring in disbelief. My heart thumped in my chest, a cold wave of fear mixing with frustration. It wasn't just lies anymore. This was a direct threat. The plan she had been building so carefully, the manipulation, the fabricated evidence, now revealed a darker intention behind it all. In the video, she stepped closer to him, her tone turning pleading, then almost commanding, as if she were trying to control the future with her words alone. "You don't understand," she added. "I can't let her have you. I won't let anyone take what I want." Her eyes were wide, desperate, obsessive, no longer playful, no longer strategic. This wasn't about jealousy or attention. It was about control. The crowd in the hall was silent, stunned. The accusations, the chaos, the earlier tension of it now seemed secondary compared to the realization of her intentions. My parents' faces were pale, and my fiancé's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with a mix of anger and concern. Even the priest, holding his book tightly, looked unsure of how to proceed. I realized then that the wedding wasn't just threatened by lies or false evidence anymore. This was personal. This was dangerous. The calmness I had maintained, the strategy I had carefully used until now, became even more crucial. I had to act carefully to reveal the truth fully and protect everyone involved. That's when everything changed. The quiet tension, the waiting, the uncertainty, all shifted into a deeper, more urgent need for resolution. My sister's obsession was no longer hidden, and it cast a shadow over the hall, over my fiancé, over me. And as the video paused for a moment, the cliffhanger was clear and terrifying. What exactly had she planned next, and how far was she willing to go to try to control the outcome? The video ended, and for a moment, the hall was frozen in complete silence. The screen went dark, but the weight of what had just been revealed lingered in the air like a heavy cloud. Guests sat motionless, staring straight ahead, trying to process everything they had just witnessed. My parents' hands trembled slightly, their eyes wide as they exchanged glances. The disbelief on their faces was clear. What they had thought was the truth had been completely turned upside down. My fiancé's shoulders relaxed slightly, but his eyes stayed alert, aware of the shift in the room and the lingering threat that still existed. Guests murmured softly among themselves, voices almost hesitant, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. The accusations, the chaos, the tension, all of it now seemed pointless in the face of undeniable truth. The calmness, the honesty, the reality captured on video spoke louder than any words I could have said. No one spoke, because no one could. The weight of the revelation had stunned everyone into stillness. My sister, once so bold and confident, now stood frozen, her face pale. The smirk was gone, replaced by a faint tremor of fear and uncertainty. For the first time, it was clear she hadn't anticipated this outcome, and her carefully constructed story was collapsing in real time. The hall was full of shifting eyes, whispered disbelief, and heavy breaths. Everyone was processing, reevaluating, and slowly realizing the full extent of what had just occurred. The chaos that had erupted moments before was replaced by a tense, uneasy calm, and in that moment, the question on everyone's mind, silent but undeniable, hung in the air. How would my sister react now? Stripped of power and exposed in front of everyone she had tried to manipulate. My sister's lips trembled as she tried to speak. It's fake," she stammered, her voice weak and wavering. The confident, commanding tone she had used earlier was gone. Now, each word sounded uncertain, almost like she was trying to convince herself as much as everyone else. She lifted the phone slightly, showing it again to the crowd. "These videos, it's edited, it's staged," she insisted, though her eyes betrayed her. They darted around the room, looking for any sign of support, any ally who could back her up. But the faces around her didn't respond the way she'd expected. Gasps of shock had faded, replaced by skeptical murmurs. Guests leaned in, squinting at the screen, comparing what they saw to what she had claimed. The polished, manipulated narrative she had built was now crumbling, and the room seemed to sense it. Even my parents' expressions, though still wary, showed growing doubt. Their eyes no longer fully trusted her words. Even her voice didn't believe her. She tried again, raising it slightly in desperation. You all have to understand. He lied to me first. Her words faltered, cut off by the uncomfortable silence of the hall. No one was rushing to defend her. No one was nodding. No one was gasping in sympathy. She was alone. I could see her confidence slipping with each second. Her carefully constructed power, the chaos she had orchestrated, now worked against her. The lies were exposed, the obsession revealed, and she had no real proof left to support her claims. And as she paused, looking desperately at the crowd, the cliffhanger became impossible to ignore, with her defenses failing and no one supporting her. What would she do next? I finally stepped forward, my voice calm but filled with quiet authority. I knew everything, I said, letting the words sink into the hall like a stone dropped into water. The silence that followed was almost unbearable. My sister's eyes widened, her lips parting slightly, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I knew about your plan, I continued, my gaze fixed steadily on her. About the photos, the messages, the lies you thought would ruin everything. I knew before this wedding even started. The room seemed to shrink around us, every guest leaning in a little closer, drawn into the weight of my words. My fiance's hand found mine, giving a small squeeze. His eyes were calm, trusting, reflecting the relief and pride he felt that the truth was finally being revealed. My parents leaned forward, a mixture of astonishment and awe on their faces. Even the priest paused, sensing the gravity of the moment. I wasn't surprised, I said softly, because I was prepared. Every detail of her plan had been anticipated. Every step she took to try to manipulate the room, to create chaos. I had already considered. I had waited for the perfect moment to show the truth, to expose the lies, and to protect the people I love most. Whispers ran through the crowd as guests began to piece it together. The tension shifted again, moving from confusion to realization. People started looking at my sister differently, noticing for the first time how her confidence had faltered, how her threats had become empty in the face of preparation. Her hands dropped slowly, the phone dangling uselessly at her side. She realized, finally, that her plan had failed completely, not because of chance, but because I had known, because I had expected, and because I had acted at exactly the right moment. And as the room held its breath, the cliffhanger hung in the air. How long had I known about her plan, and how had I prepared so meticulously to stop it? I took a deep breath and faced everyone, my voice steady as I began to explain. Those photos and messages you saw, they weren't real. Every single one of them was edited, manipulated, carefully designed to make it look like he was cheating. I paused, letting the words sink in. Gasps ran quietly through the crowd as guests realized what had been happening right under their noses. She didn't just lie, I continued, looking directly at my sister. She planned everything. The photos were altered. The messages were fake. Every accusation was created to destroy our wedding and to make you all doubt him. Doubt me, doubt everything we built together. My sister's face went pale as the weight of her exposure settled, and her confident mask had completely crumbled. I walked slowly toward the center, keeping my eyes on my parents. She thought she could control the narrative, I said softly, but truth always finds its way out. She wanted chaos, she wanted attention, and she didn't care who she hurt to get it. She hoped you would all believe her lies, and she almost succeeded. The guests were quiet, processing the revelation. Whispers of disbelief ran through the hall, but now they were tinged with understanding. People began to look at my sister differently, not with curiosity or shock, but with skepticism and doubt. The manipulation was clear, and everyone could see the truth. I glanced at my fiancé, who gave me a small nod of encouragement. The evidence you were shown, I said, was nothing more than a plan to break trust, to humiliate us, and to create drama. But now, It's exposed for what it really is. A lie. My sister's hands shook slightly, and she tried to speak again, but no one was listening. Her carefully constructed power had evaporated, leaving only desperation and shame dawdling as the room slowly absorbed the truth. The cliffhanger was impossible to ignore. How would our family react to the full extent of her manipulation? My mother's face twisted with a mix of shock, disbelief, and heartbreak. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at my sister, the same woman she had raised, now standing exposed in front of everyone. For a moment, she was silent, trembling, trying to process the depth of the betrayal. Then, suddenly, she moved. Her hand shot out before anyone could react, landing a firm, echoing slap across my sister's cheek. The sound resonated through the hall, sharp and undeniable. My sister stumbled back, blinking, her smirk completely gone. For the first time, she looked vulnerable, unsure of how to respond. "This wasn't anger," my mother said, her voice breaking, trembling but strong. "This was betrayal. You tried to ruin your own sister's happiness. You manipulated everyone, spread lies, and threatened the people you should love. Do you understand what you've done?" Tears streamed down my mother's face as she struggled to catch her breath. Her emotions raw and unfiltered. Her disappointment, shock, and hurt were clear for everyone to see. Guests murmured softly, some even looking at her with awe at the strength it took to confront such a blatant betrayal. My sister stood frozen, her phone dangling uselessly from her hand. Her confidence was shattered, replaced by fear and shame. The bold, manipulative persona she had carried into the hall moments ago was gone, leaving only the person behind the lies, exposed and alone. I took a step closer to my mother, holding her hand briefly, feeling the tremor of her emotions. My fiance's gaze met mine, calm but alert, understanding the significance of this moment. This wasn't just about lies anymore, it was about trust, respect, and the consequences of betrayal. And as the echoes of the slap and my mother's words faded, the hall fell into a tense silence, everyone watching, waiting. The cliffhanger was clear and heavy in the air. What would my father do now, confronted with the full extent of his daughter's manipulation and the emotional peak of the moment? My father stepped forward, his expression cold and unyielding. His eyes, usually full of warmth and guidance, were now sharp with disappointment and authority. He looked at my sister, standing small and exposed after everything that had happened, and spoke with a voice that carried through the hall. "There is no place for lies and betrayal in this family," he said firmly. "Leave, now." The words hit harder than any slap or accusation. My sister's face went pale, her lips trembling as she tried to speak, to defend herself. But the weight of the truth and my parents' united front left her powerless. Every move, every lie, every manipulative plan she had executed crumbled in an instant. Guests looked on, some stunned, others nodding in understanding. Whispers ran through the crowd, a mix of relief and disbelief. It was clear that my father's decision wasn't just a reaction, it was a final judgment. A declaration that manipulation and deceit would not be tolerated in our family. My mother's hand remained raised slightly from the earlier slap, her tears still visible. She looked at my father, silently supporting his decision, her own heartbreak evident but aligned with his resolve. My fiancé stood beside me, calm and steady, his hand on mine, silently reinforcing the strength of our united front. My sister's eyes darted around, searching for an ally, for someone to challenge this decision. But no one stepped forward. The room had shifted completely. Her carefully built drama and her threats of obsession had alienated everyone. She had lost all support, all trust, all influence. Slowly, she turned, her shoulders slumped, and began walking toward the exit. Each step echoed, a heavy reminder of everything she had destroyed for herself. The door closed behind her, leaving the hall filled with quiet relief, lingering tension, and the aftermath of betrayal. In that moment, it was clear. She lost everything in one moment. And as everyone in the hall absorbed the magnitude of her downfall, the cliffhanger remained. With my sister gone, what would happen next? And how would the wedding and our lives move forward from this chaos? With my sister gone, a heavy silence settled over the hall. The chaos and tension that had filled the room just moments ago began to fade, replaced by a cautious calm. My fiancé and I exchanged a small, reassuring glance, silently agreeing that it was time to continue. The music, which had stopped abruptly during the interruption, slowly resumed, soft and gentle, guiding the ceremony forward. The priest cleared his throat and returned to his duties, his voice steady as he addressed the guests once more. "Let us continue the vows," he said, and this time, the words carried sincerity, not overshadowed by drama or deception. I held my bouquet tightly, taking a deep breath, feeling the calm confidence that had been shaken earlier slowly return. Guests watched quietly, their attention now fully on us. I could feel the tension lifting, replaced by a sense of clarity and honesty. My parents sat closer, their eyes softening as they witnessed the truth fully revealed. My mother's hand found mine for a brief moment, giving a reassuring squeeze, while my father's gaze, though still serious, now carried pride. As my fiancé and I exchanged our vows again, the words felt lighter, truer, more meaningful. Every promise, every expression of love, every gesture of commitment was untainted by lies or manipulation. I realized that the storm we had endured made this moment even more powerful. Trust had been tested and proven, and our bond had emerged stronger than ever. The hall felt full of quiet understanding. Guests, once shocked and confused, now smiled softly, some nodding, some whispering quietly to each other. The ceremony, once threatened by deceit, had regained its dignity. Every eye was on us, not because of scandal or conflict, but because of the love and honesty that now defined this moment. This time, there were no lies left, no accusations, no fear of betrayal, only truth, love, and the promise of a life together. And as the ceremony neared its natural conclusion, the cliffhanger lingered in a soft, hopeful way. Could this emotional closure finally bring peace and happiness for everyone involved? The ceremony finally concluded. We exchanged rings, shared our first kiss as husband and wife, and felt the quiet joy that comes after surviving a storm. The hall, once tense and chaotic, now seemed lighter, filled with gentle smiles and quiet. "Congratulations." Guests approached, offering warm words, some still shaking their heads in disbelief at what had just happened. Others expressing admiration for how we had handled everything. As I stood beside my husband, holding his hand, I allowed myself a moment to reflect. The day had been nothing like I imagined. I had expected a celebration filled with laughter and simple happiness. Instead, I faced betrayal, lies, and a carefully orchestrated plan to hurt me. My sister, someone I once trusted, had tried to destroy the most important day of my life. She had lost herself in obsession, and in the process, lost the support and love of everyone around her. Some people are family by blood, but strangers by heart. Yet, amid the heartbreak and chaos, something stronger had emerged. I had gained truth. I had clarity, the kind that comes when deception is stripped away and reality is fully exposed. My husband had shown his loyalty, his honesty, his love not through empty words, but through actions and his unwavering integrity. I had learned that trust cannot be faked, that love cannot be manipulated, and that the people who truly matter will stand by you even when the world seems to doubt you. I glanced around the hall, seeing the relief on my parents' faces, the support of our closest friends, and the quiet respect of those who witnessed the ordeal. It was a moment of reckoning, a reminder that lies might cause chaos temporarily, but truth always prevails. As we stepped forward together, ready to begin this new chapter, I felt a sense of peace and empowerment. I had faced betrayal, exposed it, and come out stronger on the other side. I had lost someone I once called family, but I had gained something far more valuable: the certainty of truth, the safety of honesty, and the love of someone who would never deceive me. That day, I didn't just choose love, I chose truth. And in that choice, I found strength, clarity, and the beginning of a life built on honesty, loyalty, and real connection.